Hello, everybody. Guess what? It is showtime. Welcome to the Street Angel Show. My name is Mandelyn Reese. I'm known as the Street Angel. I've been wearing angel-y wings and running around the whole country since I got a higher calling to promote kindness in 2012 in Los Angeles, California. So I've been running around with all sorts of positive humanitarian universal messages like spread kindness, and I've had so many posters throughout the years and throughout the project. So serve others with love and care, pick up trash, please, everybody. Don't litter, recycle your cans and bottles and plastics. Don't throw them on the ground. Tell someone you love them because I promote love and kindness. You know, like be kind, be positive, be giving. And last one, be considerate, show kindness. There's some of my newer ones and some of my older ones. So yeah, there's a collection. So that was a background about me. My mission has just been to uplift people and send positive vibes out into the world. And more unity, mostly around the fact that we're all unique and different in this universe. And if we just had more acceptance that we're all unique and different, that it would actually be more unity, you know? If we can just make space for each other's differences and, you know, accept that we might have different opinions and different viewpoints and stuff like that. So I'm going to have a really cool topic tonight about sex, but on the healthy lines of communication. We're going to be talking about how to, you know, talk about your boundaries and things that you like and don't like, and, you know, stuff that's a definite no. How to have safe conversation. You know, are you going to be using protection? Are you like, have you had a vasectomy? You know, there's all kinds of things we're going to talk about, but that's coming a little later because you got to pay attention and get through my updates first. You understand? So I love my show. It's one of my passions. I like to help people, my guests, share their light and what they're doing in the world. Hi, Angela. And I just want to also have a lot of cool topics that add to your life and give you advice and guidance and uplift you in whatever ways. My whole life and purpose is devoted to humanity and helping others. I hope you can see that by now. And I just need support. So that is that. And also, quick spiel, still looking for donations and sponsors. Products, buy them, support my mission. This is an epic healing CD, clears your energy out, helps you get rid of trauma and refill with Holy Spirit so you feel amazing and healed energetically, clears your aura. This angel relationship guidance cards, they're not like oracle cards. They're really help you get to your inner voice and help you go through your relationships. These are like, this one says you might be asking too much of this person, take a step back. Notice the repeating signs from the universe. What are they telling you? Let's see. Well, a lot of them are questions that pose. So, and they also come with a cool yes/no cards that you can ask specific questions about to the universe. You pray over them first. And yeah, so those are for sale on my website, thestreetangel.com. And I recently got to be a speaker at an epic conference over in Mount Shasta, California, which is a very high vibrational place. It was this huge spiritual conference, and also they talked about like extraterrestrial stuff and galactic stuff, and had all these amazing, like, powerful people and speakers and guests and workshops. So it was really cool to get to be a speaker on a stage in front of a huge audience where I got to present my epic healing meditation for people, and they loved it, and heal a whole room. And I got to be on a panel of 4 of us, which were young visionaries, and speak about our visions for the future and humanity and how we're helping and contributing. So that was an amazing opportunity for me to grow my project and mission and make connections. And stuff I've done for others in the past week, I have made lots of baggies for the homeless. I give out when I see somebody homeless or, you know, panhandling. I give them a goodie gift bag. It's got papers in there about shelters and addiction help. It's got shampoo, conditioner, body wash, a bar of soap, and lotion, as well as a kind granola bar. And sometimes I slip money in there too, because they love that. Of course, who doesn't? And I also have been making these like artsy rocks. I just collect rocks that have a good flat surface, and I put art on them and uplifting quotes. Like this one says, have courage and live life to the fullest. You matter, be you, be strong. I've made 15 to 20 of them, and I leave them all around just random places for strangers to find, just to uplift them and just, I don't know, so it's fun for them to find it. Okay, so let's get on with the good stuff. Thank you for watching my spiel and my introduction. I want to say I'm very excited for my guest today. I met her when I was living back in Portland, Oregon in 2018. Her name is Evelin Dacker, and she is a doctor. It's cool I get to have a doctor on my show today. I'm going to bring her into the studio. Hello.
Hi.
Welcome, welcome.
Thank you. Thank you. Glad to be here.
Thank you. And so are you still living out in Portland?
I am. I actually live a little south of Portland. But yeah, I'm still in Oregon. I've been here for 26 years, long time.
Oh, wow. Yeah. And you've built up a good practice there?
Yeah. I have a family practice in Salem, Oregon. That I own my own practice. I started about 17 years ago. Time flies. And that's, yeah. So I work in Salem, but I do a lot of work also in Portland. Mostly my sexual communication work and community building is in Portland, Oregon.
Yeah.
Which is where we met.
I wanted to give you a little more of an intro that you're, obviously you're just a family physician, like you said, but you specialize in the sex lines of things. So you're also a sex educator and speaker on consent and boundaries, and you're a healer and a writer and a visionary. You also used to be on a board of the STARS, the Sex Positive Portland group, right?
Yeah.
And you teach something called STARS, which we're going to be thoroughly going over today. There's the little background of it. So, and she was on a TEDx talk on stage. So how would you like to talk about, what else about your background, or how do you want to start?
I have been trained a lot in holistic and integrative medicine on top of my regular Western medicine, primary care. So I always felt like I have a lot of tools in my toolbox on how to treat and heal people. I got into the whole idea of sexuality actually as I was going through integrative and holistic medicine, when I realized that we never talk about sex at all. And we never talk about pleasure in healing or with people's health. So at that time, and that was back in 2014, where I decided, okay, I'm going to be the person who's going to start talking about how important sexuality and pleasure are in our overall health.
I don't understand why it's so taboo.
I think people have a really hard time. We're just not culturally used to talking about these things. And doctors, there's so many things we feel we need to talk about that we just say, oh, that one's uncomfortable, we're not going to do it. Right. So, and there's a lot of things that we're not taught. We're taught kind of the basics. And as I started studying deeper, I realized, oh my gosh, there's so much more to learn. And how do we teach our patients to talk about it? How do we talk about it with our patients? And that's where STARS came from. It came from this idea that I wanted everybody to learn how to have what we could put in quotes, a safer sex talk. It's really a relationship building talk. I used to tell people, well, it's the talk you never learned how to do, but now you can, right? We just never learned.
It's fantastic. Yeah. I mean, I went to one of her classes in Portland. It was through Sex Positive Portland group. And it just is so basic, and yet nobody seems to do enough of it. Where if I could just tell what the STAR stands for, so we can get that done right up front. So the S stands for STI disclosure and general health discussion. The T stands for turn-ons, yeses. The A is for avoids, no's, dislikes, boundaries. R stands for relationship intentions, expectations, status, hopes. what are you going to do with this person? Is it just going to be a hookup, or are you hoping to date them or get married or what? S stands for safer sex talk. Are you going to be using condoms? Or someone on birth control? Is somebody got a vasectomy or have an IUD? Stuff like that. So I just wanted to go through that so we have it up front pretty early on. It's awesome.
Yeah. I heard a lot of different kind of safer sex talks, and there's a lot of different acronyms that are out there, but none of them seem to be appropriate for me to teach my patients, or they were too cumbersome. So STARS kind of came to me, and it seemed to consolidate the 5 most important things that I thought people need to understand about themselves, so then they could talk to with other people. And from the first time I've written it, it's kind of changed a little bit and grown a little bit, and there's different things that have become important during the development of STARS. Like the last S came from like safer sex etiquette, which was like before COVID. It's almost like, what do you do for COVID protocols? But it's actually, now I call it the safety net, or your safety needs, where we talk about like emotional, spiritual, and sexual safety. So it's all the things, we even racial safety and cultural safety.
Right.
So it's gotten bigger because this world is changing, and I've had to keep up with it.
Yeah,
have those conversations.
I would say the COVID stuff would fall under that first S, your health.
Yes.
If somebody's really worried about COVID, then they need to talk about that up front.
Right.
For me, I think condoms are amazing, great thing that humanity has created. And I think it's a definite go-to, especially if you're not in a serious relationship. I think if you're in a serious, you think is a committed relationship, then, of course you can be more bare, but that's also something you should discuss,
right,
as a couple.
Yeah. And, a lot of this is not making judgment on anybody and what their choices are. And I really, I don't feel like anything is okay. Just knowing that that there's these things to think about. A lot of people, it's so interesting. In my practice, I often will see somebody who's recently out of a divorce who comes in, and I said, so are you using condoms? They're like, no, I can't get pregnant anymore. And I'm like, okay. I don't see that we've done an STI test on you. They're like, well, I don't need to because he's been married and, he's just getting out of a divorce. I'm like, did you talk about it? They're like, oh, no, I can't. Or I had one time a patient say, oh, my gosh, I asked him and he got upset at me for asking him about STIs. I was like, well, it's really important and we should do a test. And in the end, she actually had chlamydia. So, it's
oh my gosh.
People, it's just important. Like, these things are things that we don't talk about or think about it. So STARS is really about helping you realize those important things to just think about for yourself and then communicate it with a partner. And I have to just say, I'm going to promote this right now. I'm really excited because I just came out with a new STARS workbook. It's actually almost like a 30-page journal. And it has all the questions and all the prompts and everything that you could think about, and even more than you would think about, to help you build your own STARS talk. And I am actually giving this away for free because I believe so strongly in this mission of helping people have this really great, relationship talk, sex talk, whatever you want to call it, because you don't have to have sex to go through all of these questions and all these things. Like, what is it that turns you on? What do you like? Like, it might just be, being able to ground in with somebody. It may not have to be something sexual, or it could be. It'd be like, I'm really into kink, and you might be on a date with somebody and the other person's like, that's not my thing. So it's really important to be able to identify what it is you want and what it is you don't want.
I should probably say that this talk show might be an R-rated episode because I might even say some things, I kind of hope my dad doesn't watch this one.
Maybe he should. He might learn something.
Yeah.
We're not going to be too racy.
Probably get a good lecture but anyway, getting back to the topic at hand, I would say, it is so important to talk about what works for you, especially as a woman, because believe it or not, a lot of the guys I've experiences with in the past, like they seem like they have no idea what they're doing. Even you'd be surprised, some older people, like you're just like, do you even know where the right buttons are? Like, so it's important for the receiver to tell their partner, touch me here, do it like this, this speed, like this pressure. You got to get detailed, but I even had trouble with, even if I tell a guy exactly what to do, sometimes they don't do it right, but at least I tried, right? At least you tried by telling them and having that conversation.
Well, I think it also helps people ground in together because, again, like I don't want to put a blame on one gender or another, but a lot of times people raised as men aren't really told how to attune to a person who's raised as a girl, right? I mean, sometimes they just don't have those skills of knowing, oh, I have to pay attention to their words or what they say they want. So sometimes having something written in a document can help put it in. Sometimes.
Yeah. I would say guys definitely seem happier when they're told what to do because they want to please a woman. At least I think most guys like that. I mean, you do come across the selfish douchebag sometimes. It's like just doesn't care, very selfish, and doesn't care if the girl gets off, or doesn't care about if she's pleasured. And that sucks. And you should dump a guy like that. Don't have a relationship with him because, your needs matter too.
Even better is to have this stars talk beforehand and get a good feeling if you're even on the same page, because the whole point of this is really like nobody has time for bad sex. Life is too short for bad sex. I mean, that's my own personal motto. Like, I mean, if you're going to become intimate with somebody and you're going to get naked in front of somebody, well, you might as well have a conversation that a lot of people may feel, a lot of people say, oh my God, it's so awkward to talk about this. I'm like, no, it's so much more awkward to get naked and have bad sex. And it's even more awkward to be in a situation with somebody that you're not enjoying it and feel like you have to stop it. So if the more you could put everything in the front and like front load it, you're going to be so much better off, when you're actually having those moments of intimacy. And you'll be able to tell. So in this workbook, we talk about things like, are you I talk about the Wheel of Consent by Betty Martin. It's like, do you like to take? Do you like to be taken? Do you like to receive? Do you like gift? Are you somebody who likes to serve? So like you could really kind of try to pinpoint down for yourself, like, oh, this is what, and this is in the turn on section. This is what I really enjoy. And I want, but I never realized that's what I want. And gosh, how do I tell somebody that's what I want? Well, you do this workbook and you'll have the whole, you'll have it right there. You could even write your own or show it to them or whatever. So
perfect. And it's also important to continue the communication during, like while you're being intimate, you might need to tell somebody, hey, don't touch me there, or, go easy on that, or you got to adjust as you go with the flow. And definitely. I'm going to just be like kind of vulnerable right now. Like I have to be upfront with anyone, right up front. If I know I'm going to be intimate, that like, look, I have sensitive boobs. You cannot be like smashing them or tweaking them or pinching or biting. I can't handle it. It will ruin and kill it for me. I have very delicate jewels. So for me, I mean, that's probably how a man would feel about his balls. You probably didn't want them bitten or something like that, So it's just like, you got to talk about these things.
Yes. And another really good part to really consider is our trauma, right? A lot of people have like trauma that they bring into, I mean, everybody has trauma. Everybody has trauma. But some of the trauma shows up when you're in intimacy, just being more vulnerable with somebody, being in those situations. And if you don't disclose that and actually think about how does trauma look like when like, do I dissociate? Do I start fawning? Like, what does it look like? So maybe I need to tell my partner, ooh, if all of a sudden I get really still and quiet, maybe that means that I'm not doing well. And therefore you might need to check in. So these are really important ideas that we're never taught how to talk about this before we actually get intimate with people.
Right.
And I just think that they're so critical and they're so important that's why I am, this is my gospel, spreading the message of like doing a stars talk before we get, sexy and naked with a person.
Yes. I would also love to add that, if something does happen to suddenly come up during intimacy, because sometimes somebody could get triggered in the middle of it.
Mm-hmm.
But like I had an ex who got with a girl, this was after we broke up, but she had been raped. And there was a trigger for her of being held down in a specific way because it triggered that memory.
Mm-hmm.
And he accidentally, did that, and she flipped out. So the point of the story is you also have to be careful and gentle with your partner in the moment. If something weird like trauma comes up and they get triggered, just trying to, put on the brakes. Maybe you need to talk about it, explain,
Yes.
or they need to have a moment to explain or catch their breath or rest. You can't plan for some of this stuff. It just might happen. And that's where, talking is so important.
And the more you talk beforehand, the better and easier it is to talk during.
Definitely. Some people might not even know something will come up until during, like it happens.
Absolutely. And there's a lot of things like I have a lot of people telling me like, a lot of women, and unfortunately, people right now are getting a lot of their sex education through pornography. And so there's a lot of things that are happening in the bedroom that are directly from porn that may not be consensual for both parties, like choking. And how many times have I had somebody tell me, slapping, choking, that they didn't want that, but they felt like they had to go along with it. So by actually doing a stars talk and like going through all of, because in that workbook, I have all of these things that you may or may not like. I mean, some people like it and that's perfectly legitimate. But it would be good that your partner knows what you like and don't like.
Totally. Yeah. And you've actually talked to colleges and other doctors about this stuff, about stars.
Yes. I'm trying to help promote it as a tool that we could give our patients and also teach our patients. I know that sometimes it feels like, oh my gosh, one more thing that we have to do. But as a physician, I could always get a little bit of this idea into my patient visits, especially if they're coming in for their wellness exam or an STI check. And then, just point them to my website. And now with this new handy dandy workbook, it should be a lot easier. So you don't have to, doctors don't have to teach their patients. They could just go and find the information for themselves.
Yeah, I meant to show that earlier. This was Evelin on stage in the TEDx talk.
That was in 2018.
Oh, the year I met you. Cool.
Yeah. I had brown hair then. My natural. I was telling Mandy that this it looks a lot bluer in this light.
It does. It's like vibrant.
It's actually kind of purple and darkish, but
somebody left a comment though that they love your hair, so
thank you.
Audience likes it.
I like it. I decided when I turned 50 I was gonna let my natural hair grow out, and this is what happened. So
cool. So what was that like for you being on stage? Were you nervous?
Yes. Back in 2014, when I had this like epiphany that I wanted to discuss more about sexuality in medicine, I said to myself, I'm going to do a TED talk or a TEDx talk. So I had that in my brain. So as soon as I could apply for one, I did. And it was really intense. I had to memorize my whole talk, which is like a little over 16 minutes.
Wow.
And I had to write it, first of all, and then I had to memorize it. And it was a lot of work. By the time I got out on stage, I thought I would be more nervous. But by the time I got out on stage, I was just so happy that I was able to share this idea, because I really do feel like it's an idea that can change the world and that could change so much.
You manifested your dream because you're like, I want to do a TEDx talk, and then boom, you made it happen. That's really cool.
I mean,
was it a big audience?
Yeah, I'm in the process of manifesting it.
Oh, okay. How big was your audience in that particular one?
Oh, I don't know. maybe 3,000, something like that. Maybe
That's
1,000, between 1,000 to 3,000, something like that. It was a lot. It was big.
Whoa, that's a huge audience. Wow, cool. So, what about more about your integrative stuff and coaching do you do?
Yeah. So the other part of my work that I do is I do a lot of education around sexually transmitted infections. And I really want to destigmatize them and get people comfortable with the idea. And it's actually a little easier coming out of COVID because we've been talking about infectious disease so much. And now with the new monkeypox, like people are just hearing about all these like infectious diseases. It's becoming more and more common. So actually talking about STIs, sexually transmitted infections, has become weirdly one of my areas of expertises and passions. It's a weird passion, but I love the idea of just recognizing it and making it not something super scary or feeling dirty, and changing our language and changing the way that we see them. So I'm writing a book. One of my books I'm writing right now is on destigmatizing STIs, which is really just like very comprehensive discussion on what they are and how they're transmitted. And I did the whole book without ever using a gender. I just used body parts so that it could be easily accessible to any person with any body. So I don't like terms like men who have sex with men as a group, because so many men who have sex with men are monogamous and aren't at risk. So really, it's kind of like people who have penises who have sex with multiple people with penises, like multiple group sex. That's the risky behavior. It's not that you're a man having a sex with men. It's that, it's the type of sex, it's the quantity of sex, it's how you're having sex. And
Right.
then it'll help people realize, oh, I don't have to be so scared. Like herpes, 80% of people who have herpes don't even know they have herpes.
Oh,
And
wow.
there's a lot of people who have herpes who are asymptomatic and who can't transmit it. And so really there's only 20% of people who have herpes who present in a really classic way. So we think like, oh my God, it's this really scary, awful thing. And when I have it, I'm never going to be able to be the same. But really, a lot of people, many more people have it than they realize. And many more people, even when you have it, it doesn't mean that you're automatically contagious. So I like teaching that. Like I like teaching people that how not to be scared, but how to make wise choices. I try to stay away from words like when people say, "Oh, I had my STI check and it was clean." I really strongly, recommend people don't use the word clean, because clean is a judgy word, meaning that if you have an STI, like if you live with herpes or HPV, human papillomavirus, or HIV, then are you dirty? Are you sullied? What does that mean? So really careful about changing our language and wording around it.
And that
I
was
also,
something I appreciated learning in SPP, sex positive Portland class. Like the education presented was very useful, and having just being gentle with your language and more careful, and especially around the gender. You mentioned that earlier. It was really cool to learn all the different labels and the fact that so many people have different sexualities. How I went to like the SPP starter group, and there was like 20 people in there, and I swear it seemed like every single person had something different to say about what their sexuality was. I was like, wow, that was very eye-opening. People weren't just like, yeah, I'm straight. No, it was like a whole variety of shades of like stuff in there. And same with gender. There's people who want to be called an it, or then there's the they. And that's so confusing for people who are new to it. But once you kind of had the education, then you can be more careful about your speech.
yes. And you could be more
Considerate.
inclusive. Yes, yes, and compassionate and kind once we kind of realize that we're all the same thing, even if we're all a little shades of different. Yeah. So I do a lot of teaching on STIs and trying to deconstruct that, make it less scary, just kind of removing the fear out of doing something that gives us pleasure. And I do consultations with people if they have an STI or they want some help around it. I do the regular primary care medicine stuff, but I'm also have like, as I said earlier, like a big toolbox. And I also incorporate some of my spiritual practices and my healer. I would say I'm more than a doctor, I'm also a healer. And that doesn't always come out in my medical practice because I'm so busy just doing primary care. But in my consultations when I work with people, I decided that I don't do coaching. It's just not I don't have the time and the bandwidth to actually coach people. But I do consultations on STIs, on sexuality, I work a lot with mostly people with vaginas who have had trauma in medical offices, who felt and just when they come to me for their exams, I just have a really different way of approaching and recognize that we hold a lot of trauma. A lot of people hold a lot of trauma in their genitals, and we have to be compassionate and kind when we're working with that area, and not just be like, oh, I'm just going to stick this in here and get your pap and send you on the way home. So
it's one of our most vulnerable areas.
Yeah.
And it's for women, it's literally the entrance to our body, like our soul. And, in a lot of ways, a pathway to our heart. Because I don't know if a lot of people know this, but I swear when you're having an intimate encounter with, a partner, it can really trigger things. And sometimes orgasm can trigger tears. It can trigger different things, not just orgasm. It can trigger other things. I've had that happen to me a few times where I was going through something and I had an orgasm and then I started crying because it shifted emotions and whatever came out, and I had no control over it, and it was a little awkward, but you never know what's going to happen sometimes.
Right. I mean,
depends what someone's gone through or going through.
Yeah. Sex could be very intimate, and it's very vulnerable. It's a very vulnerable space for many people. And it's vulnerable in how we approach it and what we want from it and what we need to feel safe in it. And that's why, like the rest, I talked a little bit about the STI sexual health part of the first S, the turn-ons and avoids, the turn-ons of what you want and what you like. And the avoids are also your boundaries, what you don't want, a little bit about your traumas. And then, of course, there's the I don't knows and the maybes. And then the relationship intentions, expectations part of the talk is really about, like, what does sex mean to me? That's a big question. I think that takes people a little while to think about. And it changes. And sex can mean something really different for me with one person than it would with another person. But, some people, and we can't assume, we all have a different thing that it means. So it's really important to know that and then to communicate it, because you might be dating somebody who has a totally different feeling of what sex means to them. It's also about, like, what our intentions are with one another. What is my intention with you? Because sex means this to me. I have this intention when I have sex or with you. And because sex means this to me, I have these expectations from you. So again, deconstructing that and really understanding those aspects for yourself makes it so much easier to be able to communicate them with someone else.
I agree. When I've looked online at various dating sites, it's insane how many guys are looking for FWB, friends with benefits, and a lot of the guys seem like they're looking for hookups and all that, but that's something you got to be aware of. But sex can be very bonding, especially for the female. I've read books in psychology. I was a psychology major in college, and we read stuff about this where sex releases things, especially in a woman, that creates bonding to her partner emotionally and physically, because the bonding agent is a survival technique of biology that we have no control over, or it's like it creates that bonding because the woman wants to breed with the guy subconsciously, and they want to keep the guy around to help raise the babies. It's very strange, the basic primal stuff that goes on that a lot of people aren't aware of. Even we have an organ in our nose that sniffs pheromones, and you could get bonded to a guy more that way, unbeknownst to you, because we're designed to kind of chemically be attracted to guys similar to our dad, but not exactly the same. And we have no control over that. It's just, biology. It's very interesting stuff, right?
Yeah, I mean, it's really complicated. It's really complicated because humans are these sexual beings that couldn't have sex for our entire lifespan. So, you might be speaking about women in their 20s and people, in their 20s and 30s, but that changes because as you age, your desire for sex changes with where you're at. And someone who is in their later life, like I have patients in their 70s and 80s that are still sexually active, and they are together and doing this in really different reasons than because they want to be, bonded. And then there's people of all genders who like just having friends with benefits and hookups. It's easy, it's fun, it allows them to just be in pleasure, and all of it is okay. There's like nothing that's wrong with any of it. It's just about like, hey, is that what I want? Do we want the same thing? Or are you going to tell me that you want a relationship just so you could hook up with me?
Mm.
And sometimes, and the other thing is things change. I want to put that out there. Like we could change and we could change our minds. Like we could start with somebody and be like, I'm all full in. I want to create a relationship with you. And then 2 or 3 months down the road, be like, no, I'm really not into this. It doesn't work for me in my life.
Right.
And that's okay.
Right.
And that happens. That happens.
Mm-hmm. And it's all about communication. You have to communicate how you're changing, your feelings change.
Yeah, one would hope.
Yeah.
One would hope that a person could communicate that. And if a person can't communicate that, if they choose to just like disappear or break off a relationship or just not actually, then really it's about their trauma and not about you. And that's something that could be really hard to accept. Like if somebody gets broken up with, sometimes it feels like, oh my God, I wasn't good enough. And what did I do wrong? And blah. But really it's not about you at all. It's about the other person. And maybe the relationship just didn't fit into their lives. And maybe they just didn't have the skills, or they had too much trauma in their life that they knew how to communicate. So like ghosting is quite prevalent right now because people just don't know that it's okay. Like it's easier for them to avoid it than to actually say something. But hopefully with somebody doing this work, learning stars, feeling more comfortable communicating, they have the skills, they have better skills to avoid those situations.
And people need to also clear their throat chakra of blockages and trauma so you can speak your truth and speak your whatever you need and your boundaries and your no's, and be able to speak up even during sex. Say, hey, I don't like that, or can you slow down, or whatever. You got to be able to strengthen those communication skills and use it for the highest and best good of all. Yourself,
Absolutely.
your partner, your relationship. Just speak it out. And you never know, something could really get better if you have the courage to speak up.
I would think almost a lot of things would get better.
Yeah.
If you speak it.
And I like how, we were talking about expectations and statuses, hopes. I think it's important for people to be upfront. Like, do you want to get married someday? Do you want to have that conversation, because I think some people could get overwhelmed if they start hooking up with someone and then they're like, whoosh, very attached, and then they want the expectations of, okay, we're item now. I've heard of this happening where a guy just goes and hooks up with a girl and then suddenly she's all in love with him and like, okay, we're dating now, we're together, we're girlfriend, boyfriend. And it's like, wait, what just happened? How did this move so fast? Like, we need that communication.
Yeah. From both people.
Yeah.
For sure.
I don't know, like maybe sometimes hookups create more feelings than people thought they would, because that could happen too.
Yeah, it totally does. It can. Yeah. And then the last S is safety. And safety is big because actually this whole talk is a safety talk. It's about it's about really creating, like you both are co-creating what you need to feel safe with one another. And in that, I like to say that we have to talk about not just our sexual safety, which is, are we going to use barriers? What kind of barriers? For what are we going to use it for? Are we going to use it for oral or just for, genital penetration? Or are we going to not use anything? And what are we going to do for birth control? And what if it fails? Like, what if there ends up being a pregnancy? What do you think you would want to do? Like, these are really important conversations in the beginning. And like, oh, and if one of us ended up having an STI, how would that affect us? A lot of people these days are non-monogamous. So having this STI conversation and safety is really important. So you could make sure that everybody who's in that non-monogamy setting knows how to kind of come together and deal with things if things go wrong. Also, in that safety, I like to talk about drugs and alcohol. People tend to forget that. But like if I am with somebody and they're drinking a lot, like that makes me not feel safe. And so that's part of my stars talk is like alcohol and sex for me don't really go together.
Okay. Yeah, that's a good conversation to bring up too. I totally agree. Like, especially because it lowers people's inhibitions.
Yes.
And
Yeah.
I think a lot of people have drunken hookups and then they have regrets in the morning.
Yeah.
They're
Yeah.
like, oh, what did I do? Or I forgot to bust out a condom. Or they wake up and they don't even remember what happened, like,
Yeah.
ugh.
So hopefully having a stars talk beforehand, and it doesn't have to be really involved. I mean, it could be really involved. It could take a long time, or it could be really just like, this is what I need. I need that. And like, if we're going to have a hookup, just like use condoms. If we're going to do this, I'm going to get tested. If it comes back positive, I'm going to text you with the results if there's something to be concerned about, or just whatever. Um, other needs are like emotional needs too. Aftercare. People don't talk about aftercare. Like there's this assumption that after sex you just want to be cuddled and hugged, but there's some people who don't want to be touched at all. And like if you touch somebody who doesn't like to be touched, it could ruin everything for them. So like knowing that before you're in that situation could really help a lot.
Yeah, that would be awkward. And or people who just want to jump up and go wash really fast. Like,
Right.
I mean, I particularly don't like that when that happens. I'm like, hey, I'm a cuddler. I like to cuddle. So
Yeah. Yeah.
it's just funny because I have had that happen where you're like, it's like done. They get up and run off to do something like, hey, or the phone rings and it's like, we weren't finished with the aftercare here.
Right. Because we don't value the aftercare, and the aftercare is really important. It's really important. So we need to adjust that. That kind of is in my relationship expectations. Like, let's talk about aftercare. Aftercare is important, and safety in all these ways. Talk about safety in terms of racial and cultural and religious, spiritual needs. People come from different places, and do you have any of those needs around that? But so many things that people don't think about that really help if you address it early on.
Yeah, and I would say a lot of these conversations now are happening on emailing, texting apps, and you got to be able to type it out and ask your questions and, try to clear the air, I guess, before you schedule the hookup.
Yeah. And if you go to Make Time for the Talk and just there's a link to get a free one of these workbooks that is, I think, really useful. So
I want to put out a plug for the older I get, and the more I learn what does and doesn't work for me, as well as like also noticing that hardly any guys seem to be responsible in carrying protection. It's like condoms are the number one birth control readily available in bazillions of boxes at the store, and yet hardly any men seem like they carry condoms. And it's frustrating when, let me just say I've been out of that phase for a while, where I did go through a little phase after my divorce where I was kind of in a hookup zone. But it was frustrating to me that guys wouldn't carry their own stuff. They just either expect to be bare, raw, or expect the woman to handle that aspect. Or it always seems up to the woman to wear protection, at least in my experience. And, for me, it's like a definite. I'm like, and I want to tell people everybody should carry at least 2 condoms in case you have a mishap with the first one.
Yeah. So, if you have a stars talk beforehand, you're like, we're going to use condoms and you need to bring your condoms because I don't know what you like and I don't know what fits you well.
And some people are allergic to latex.
Right.
So
right. And, and I know a lot of penis owners don't like to wear condoms because it decreases the sensitivity. I find that, and unfortunately, it's hard to get the internal condom or the 5.2C condoms, but those are a great option. The internal condoms, because they're looser and they're not tight around the penis. So like when when there's penetration, it doesn't feel like there's something restricting them. And most penis owners actually really prefer using the 52C.
I've never even heard of that before.
You have the internal condom?
Is that the female condom?
Yeah.
They're kind of bigger, right?
Yeah.
I remember getting one as a sample once at this sex shop, and I opened it up and I couldn't figure that thing out. And I have a vagina, and I was like, how in the heck do you operate?
You just put it in like, there's a ring, kind of like you would have put in a diaphragm.
I felt like a kindergartner. I was like, I don't know how to make it work. Like,
you could also put it over a penis, and how, when they go inside, they could kind of put it in too.
So use it like a condom instead of jamming it in yourself as a woman. Yeah. Okay, that makes sense. Because I was so discombobulated with it, I just threw it away.
Yeah, you know what? It's different, right? The first time you ever get to see, the first time anything is presented, it always is like a little confusing. Totally. But I kind of wish it was more available and then more people knew about it and used it, because I do think it would increase condom use.
Dang, we should have had some ready to do a demo.
I know. Like, I wish I had some.
How you use.
I do have some, but I don't have anything right here. The other thing about that I want to make clear is that condoms are not really, they help protect, but they're not protection. It's like you could be safer, but you could never be totally safe. Right. And I think when we use words like protection, we're thinking like, oh my God, that's going to protect me. But there's so many other things that you're not going to get protected against. You're not going to get protected against being emotionally hurt or physically hurt, So I'm not a fan of using the word protection as much. Condoms is good because then we know what we're talking about. And there's some STIs you can get even if you use condoms.
Like which ones?
So herpes, and you can get HPV. Because it just takes skin to skin contact. Also monkeypox, skin to skin contact, prolonged skin to skin contact.
No, this monkeypox is kind of a newer thing that's coming out. What do you know about it?
I know that it's related to the smallpox vaccine, and right now it's mainly in groups of people who have a lot of group sex encounters. So, in those kind of in the groups of what is usually called men who have sex with multiple men. So kind of it's in that group, like the men who have sex with multiple men. So not just gay men, but gay men who may have like a lot of hookup sex, a lot of non-covered hookup sex. They don't use condoms. A lot of sex while they're maybe on drugs, so they're not really paying attention to what they're doing, and a lot of prolonged contact. So
I didn't realize it was more of a sexually transmitted type thing.
Yeah, this new strain seems to be. And it's, sometimes people get a fever and feel sick and then get a rash, but sometimes a rash starts first. The good news about it is that nobody's died from it. It's just uncomfortable. It just could be kind of painful, especially they kind of are like little bumps, like pimples. They could become little blisters with a little dimple in the middle. That's what they usually look like. But they could occur anywhere, like on your face, on your arms, on your hands and feet, and around your genitals. But it could be, it could be uncomfortable. And there is some antivirals available for it, and there's a vaccine. So if you happen to be somebody who fits into that grouping of people, you should really go to your doctor and see if you can qualify for the vaccine, or go to an STI clinic and see if you can qualify for the vaccine.
Okay. Well, thank you for sharing that, because I've seen it in the news headlines, but I haven't actually gone and researched it myself. Mm-hmm. So it's kind of always good to be kind of up to speed on these things.
Yeah. As I say, I kind of have I know a lot about STIs for some reason.
No, you do personal coaching, correct?
No, I don't do coaching. I do consults.
Could you, if people could reach you and do a Zoom with you?
Yes.
Okay, good. So they would go to your website if they wanted to schedule and have a, because I think what's so great about you, Evelin, is your open-mindedness, your open-heartedness, and you give that people that comfort for them to be able to open up and talk vulnerable with you about stuff maybe they wouldn't be able to talk with anyone else about. And so I just wanted to make sure,
Yeah.
go to evelindacker.com if you would like to make an appointment to talk to Dr. Evelin.
And then make time for the talk if you want the download of the STARS workbook and just information about the STARS talk in general. And soon I will have an STI guidebook out, hopefully sometime by this summer.
Yeah,
It'll be available on both sites.
If you wanted to go to her website, she also has a free YouTube video of the whole STARS education, right?
Yes.
A master's class. It's on her website. You can check it out. You can also hire Evelin if you want her to come and speak at your venue or to whoever, professionals or college, to teach people about STARS and sexual education and more comfort around that talk. I think we do need to get rid of some of the shame and the guilt and around talking about it. And I love how you say pleasure is important for healing trauma. Do you want to talk a little more about that?
Yeah, I think that being human is really hard. As we all know, it's like we sometimes carry so much. And when I see people who have chronic illnesses, autoimmune disease, all of this stuff, I mean, I believe it's so based on our suffering and trauma. Now, the other flip side of the coin is actually pleasure. They're both modulated by the same neurotransmitter, oxytocin and dopamine. And when we're in suffering, it's hard to feel pleasure. And when we're in pleasure, we don't want to feel suffering. But they're really both the same things. And learning how to fluctuate between them could be what is so healing. So being able to access that pleasure. And pleasure doesn't just mean sex. I mean, pleasure could be going outside and listening to the birds. It could be watching a beautiful sunset. It could be holding the hands of your beloved. I mean, it could be so much. But really, actually using it as a modality for healing is very powerful. It could really help navigate through your trauma.
Right. Yeah. Like I was saying earlier, how sometimes orgasm can trigger an emotional release. And that's just what the body needed to do at that moment in time. And have you ever had that?
Of course. Yeah.
Okay. So I'm not the only one.
No, you're not just, no.
Yeah.
In all of the ways. Like sometimes you just feel so overcome by this wave of emotion, which is probably like your oxytocin release that you're just like, wow. But I'm a crier.
Me too. I fully admit. So I wanted to save the juiciest question for last, only because it's a very raging topic right now. The Roe versus Wade controversy.
Yes.
I have my thoughts and would like to just kind of open it up for discussion.
Yeah, what are your thoughts?
My thoughts are, I've always been, naturally, for some reason, my whole life, I've always been just kind of pro-choice. And from I call it like a higher consciousness perspective, that I feel like everybody has their own life journey. Every soul is going through something different and unique in their life. And I don't think there should be any particular group or government telling somebody that they can't have this life-saving medical procedure. And especially, like, my opinion is very great for people who are victims of rape, incest, stuff against their will, sex trafficking. I think people, or if a pregnant woman's life is in danger, I feel like there needs to be gray areas that, there's just not these legal battles about. And I can completely also see from the whole Christian standpoint where they're like, these are innocent babies and stuff like that. I can see all sides of the problem, and I can see why people get into extreme battles about it. And I engaged with one person once, and we had this long, exhausting battle about it, which was funny because a person who was so pro not abortion, or how do you say it, pro-life, he actually got himself in a corner saying that he was like, oh, well, if people are having sex and, they should make this an issue. I'm like, well, there's people who didn't agree to the sex. So it's like they should have the option to not have to have a pregnancy that they didn't want, or that they weren't doing risky behavior to get.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? So to me, I just feel like it's everybody's individual situation that, it's really up to God. Like, you know, it shouldn't be up to a bunch of other people, especially a group of men saying that women can't. I just don't think a government full of men should have a say over women's uteruses.
No, I agree with you 100%. I think that as a doctor, it's just terrifying for us to be told that saving a woman's life is a crime,
Right.
because the fetus or the unborn child's life comes first. Because who's going to take care of that unborn child? You know, who, like, it's the Supreme Court's not going to take care of that child.
Right.
So, yeah, I think it's terrifying, scary. Uh, it brings so much anger and rage that my uterus, like everybody's uterus, is now being legislated. Like people who, you know, our reproductive rights are being taken away. It's rather mind-boggling and terrifying. I'm glad that there's other ways to, you know, there's medications and herbs that some people use. So there's ways around it, but it's still, it's just, I mean, you're almost taking it out of the hands of doctors now. And that's really scary.
Right.
So I think it's going to, for so many reasons, it brings so much more harm than even I think even the pro-life people are going to recognize that they're not really being pro-life when they're causing more deaths.
Right.
And
a lot of women have been coming forward with their stories, publicly posting that, like Gabrielle Bernstein, she's a speaker I look up to a lot. I met her in person in Hollywood, and she was 5 months along when she had they found out her son was going to die. He had something wrong with the fetus, and if they didn't get it out of her, it could kill her. So it's one of those gray area cases where it's like she wanted a baby. She had tried for 2 years or something like that. Like she would try very hard to get pregnant. She finally got pregnant, and then she had to lose that fetus. But, you know, who's to say, oh, well, it's illegal. You're going to have to either be forced to have this dying fetus and possibly kill both of you, instead of having a safe medical procedure that could end this dying fetus that is clearly something very wrong with it, and save the life of the mother, and she can go on and try to have another baby that's healthy.
Right. You know? Yeah, I mean, I think it's scary and sad. I guess that's my 2 cents in there. I don't know.
I think it's going to be a legal battle forever.
It will.
Kind of like the death penalty. There's always going to be people who are deathly for something and give their life for it, and there's always going to be people who would for the other side of it. I just think,
absolutely,
you know, and you just have to understand people have their opinions, and sometimes you cannot change people's minds, and you just have to be okay with that. But we all have a right to our own opinions.
For sure.
You know,
just don't put it into the law.
Right. Well, that pretty much concluded everything. Did you want to add anything else?
No, I think that's good. Thank you for inviting me and for being this wonderful host and having a great conversation this afternoon.
Likewise. It's great to see you again. I know it's not in person to give you a hug and stuff, but it's super cool that you agreed to be on the show, even though you hadn't seen me in years. But now that I cranked back my season 6 and I was thinking of people I was like always wanted to interview, and you were at the top of the list.
Oh, thank you.
One of the last things I forgot was I was going to show pictures of me on the panel real quick. I was meant to do it when I was talking about it, but I forgot. But you can't see, but there was a really decent crowd. That's when I was doing my epic healing meditation for the big crowd. And then that was the panel of visionaries. So anyway, I just wanted to show that because I forgot. And one last of Evelyn with my logo in the way. Let me see. I don't know how to remove it. There. Much better. All right. Well, that concludes the show. And I want to thank the audience for watching, if anyone actually watched all the way through. And I hope you learned something cool to add to your life. And thank you so much, Dr. Evelin Dacker, for your time. To get a doctor's time is really special. So everybody say thank you to her if you get a chance. Book her session if you need it. And God bless to everyone.
Thank you.
Have a good night. Bye-bye. I'm going to end the broadcast.